Hello and welcome. This is Jay with Web App Hero, and this video is about Vagrant. Vagrant makes it easy to create portable development environments that you can share between your local system and your cloud deployment infrastructure, such as DigitalOcean. Also, making it easy to share the exact same environment among a team of developers, which we're starting to build here at Meals 7. So it's coming in very handy to start playing around with this stuff. And although I am new to it, I've invested a day or so diving into the documentation, playing around with it, and I have found it very intuitive and easy to get started with. And I just wanted to save you some time, but also encourage you, of course, to dive into the documentation for yourself. You can find that at vagrantup.com and docs.vagrantup.com, and you will find the documentation to be superb. So, why should you care? Vagrant produces portable environments. We talked about that. You can easily share these environments. I think the killer feature of Vagrant is the fact that it will automatically sync files between your project folder, your web app, and the /Vagrant directory of the guest virtual machine. And so this is just really handy. This means you can use Sublime Text as your text editor or whatever your favorite text editor is, and VI, Vim, Emacs, whatever, and you can work with the files on your local system because they're synchronized, and then they exist inside of your guest VM just like that. So that's really convenient. How do we get Vagrant? That's really easy. Just go to the Vagrant site, go to the Downloads tab, and in Vagrant Downloads, you'll go to the topmost folder there and select the appropriate operating system download binary and get that installed as per usual on your local system. And then you'll go to virtualbox.org and do the same thing. Go to the download file and install it in the usual way. And once you have a Vagrant and VirtualBox installed on your system, everything else gets really easy. And we have a Web App Hero article which can walk you through all the steps of getting started. And this is just to help streamline the process so that you can see how easy it is. And they actually have a really good getting started guide on the Vagrant Docs site as well. So be sure to check out the getting started guide there once you've seen this overview. Okay, so let's dive in. So as we discussed, by default, Vagrant uses VirtualBox as a, quote, provider to create a box. So a box is what Vagrant refers to as a virtual machine. That is the set of configuration that is used to produce that same box over and over and over again. So the boxes are recreatable, and you can create multiple boxes. Such is the case where we have a web server and also a separate server for our database. And so we could have in one configuration file, which is called the Vagrant file, so named because it is spelled capital V AGRANTFILE. It's case insensitive, but this file is where we will do pretty much all of our configuring. So let's go ahead. I've got a directory over here called Vagrant Demo. We're actually going to make a new directory inside of that and call this project underscore folder. So we can start to see this stuff in action. Now, you can, if you already have an existing project folder, you can change directories into your project folder, and once Vagrant is installed, you'll be able to run these commands. You'll do Vagrant init from within your project folder, and that defines the root of your project folder. And the other thing that it does is it creates the Vagrant file in and actually I did not change directories into the project folder, so that's what we need to do first. So let's do that. All right, and let's just run this Vagrant init again in the correct location this time, and voila. Okay, so now I'm in the project folder, and I only have one file, and that is the Vagrant file. And let's just touch another file. We'll just call it another file. .py, just an example file to have. So we have two files in our project folder. We have a Python file, and we have the Vagrant file, which is the configuration file. Now, the way that a Vagrant file works is it will search the current directory for a Vagrant file, and if it can't find it there, it'll bubble up to the next directory above to the parent directory, and if it can't find it there, it'll keep bubbling up until it gets to root Vagrant file. And in this way, you can actually create some intricate configurations. But for the purposes of this video and for the mainstream usage that you'll find yourself doing, this Vagrant file that is in the project folder is the one that you'll be working with. And I encourage you to just go ahead and read through it when you're done watching this video. It'll take some of the mystery out of things, and really these first few paragraphs are the ones where the magic happens. And here there's always a base box, config.vm box equals base, and there's some stuff in here about the network that we're going to get to in a second. So anyway, definitely check out the Vagrant file. And the purpose of the Vagrant file is this defines the machine type for the guest machine that we're creating, or machines. In this case, for this video, let's just talk about doing a single guest virtual machine. So it's going to define the machine type. It's going to define the guest machine configuration, and it's going to define the guest machine provisioning is what it's called, and that's basically the list of software that you want installed, such as Apache Server, etc. And of note is that we want to add the Vagrant file to our version control software. So we want to check that in. We want to add that to Git or Mercurial. And this allows other developers to simply check out the file and run Vagrant up. And that will bring up a virtual machine with the exact necessary configuration, and that way everybody is on the same page. So it's just really, really cool. Okay, so it's powerful. And so we have a Vagrant file now. And on the left, you'll see that I've actually already written the article that you can reference while or after watching this video. And we have the section down here where setup goes, something like this. We've already gotten started on this. We've run Vagrant init. And now what we need to do is actually add a box to Vagrant. And this is really interesting when we do this, because what Vagrant is going to do here is it's going to keep track of which boxes are installed. And so we're actually running the command vagrant box add. And the next argument is precise32, which is the name that we're choosing to call this and reference this box locally on this system. And the URL of the location where this can be found. And there's actually a typo that I've identified there. It's actually supposed to be files.vagrantup.com/precise32.box. So we'll get that fixed. But so the interesting thing about this is that Vagrant is going to keep track of this box, and it's going to manage this box in a separate directory that it takes care of for us. So our pretty little folder here, project folder that is pristine with simply two files, the Vagrant file and the another file, it'll be left untouched. And So this takes a few moments to get going here. We're just going to allow this to complete. Okay, and my system is telling me that this box actually already exists, and I had forgot, and this is important to note that boxes are shared. All your Vagrant boxes are shared among all project folders, and so you can think of boxes as like a starting point. And when you bring a box into a project, you're cloning that existing box and bringing it into the project. And so this box already exists, which is good news. So we can get on about our business, which is that next we need to edit the Vagrant file within our project folder. Okay, so now we need to update our Vagrant file, and the first change that we need to make is to change the name of the box. We're going to change that from base to precise 32. And this stuff is noted in the article. We're actually going to break it up and do it in 2 chunks because the network isn't really necessary to show you what I want to show you. And so we're just going to make this change, save that, come back out here to our project folder, and that's it. Now that Vagrant is aware of the name of the box that we want, we simply run the command Vagrant up. And really, Vagrant is just this simple. So Vagrant up, and let's actually watch this progress go so you can get a feel for how long it takes. Okay, so now we're just waiting for the machine to boot. This some of the things like the importing would have taken a little bit longer had it been, I think, the first time that it was doing this. So there are some efficiencies that you're seeing because I've done this before. And there are 3 different ways to tear down the box once it has come up, and we'll talk about that towards the end of this video. But it's relevant because you can see that it does take a little time for things to get set up, and keep in mind that we're not even provisioning software such as Apache at this time. So things look good. We now have a Vagrant box. Now there's really no indication on our command line here, but one of the things that we can do to quickly verify is run Vagrant SSH to SSH into the box. And boom, we're in. So we're actually at the command line for precise 32. So we're inside of the guest virtual machine at this time. And one of the cool things that we can do is actually, let's just change directories. Let's go to the root directory and lists. And you'll notice there's a Vagrant directory there. And let's change directories into Vagrant and do a list, and you'll notice that another file, another underscore file.py is actually in the /vagrant directory. That's because /vagrant is automatically synchronized to the project folder of the directory in which the initiating Vagrant file is located. So whatever project folder you ran your Vagrant up command in, you'll be able to work with those files through this directory right here. And so I just think that is really, really cool. And that's it. You know, you're on an Ubuntu 12.04 environment, and the last thing that we need to learn about is, well, one thing I will discuss very quickly is on the networking side, the one thing that we skipped over. There's a great example. I encourage you to do it, to go through the Getting Started guide on the Vagrant site. This video is not meant to be a substitution for reading the documentation and going through things carefully. It's just to give you some momentum going into that process. And what you'll find is a really great example of actually provisioning the software for Apache. And once Apache is provisioned, you can actually set up this forwarded port like this, and then go to that port in your web browser, and you will be able to verify that you are communicating from your host system through the network to your guest virtual machine. And so there is communication, obviously, right now through the file system in which we have our synchronized folder, but with the network traffic, obviously, it's much more dynamic and you can do a lot more cool things. So that's it on the network stuff. And at this point, I just want to show you a couple of things. So I'm still inside of the guest virtual machine, and I can simply type exit to get back out. If I wanted to just go back in real quick, I could do Vagrant SSH, and boom, I'm back in just like that. So you see the box is still up and running. And do exit again. And at this point, we have three choices of how we want to tear down this virtual machine, and the implications are how much resources on our local system do we want to, give this guest on an ongoing basis. And so if we're developing, quite frequently in this project, then we're probably going to want to leave it up. We could just exit and go back in just like you've seen just now, but if you want to actually suspend things, you can do Vagrant suspend. That's sort of the lightest mode. Actually, I'll discuss destroy first, because this is really the coolest thing. You can do Vagrant destroy, and it destroys all traces of the guest machine. So there's nothing left on your local system, no system resources, no disk space, nothing. You can do Vagrant halt, which is a graceful exit of the virtual machine. The disk of the guest virtual machine is saved. And the next time that you go in, you're going to have a little bit longer boot time than the third option, which is Vagrant Suspend. And so with Vagrant Suspend, you get, of the three options, the quickest boot time on your next boot. But this is very disk space hungry because it's having to store the state of the virtual machine RAM, random access memory. So you've seen a lot of stuff here in Vagrant already, and keep in mind that you can do multiple machines, as we talked about, having a web server and a database server, and you can do other cool things, such as you can have different providers. So say I know I want to standardize on Ubuntu 12.04 because maybe I'm seeing that a lot of the documentation that I'm finding help. Like on DigitalOcean, a lot of the documentation is 12.04. And so even though there's 13.10 out or whatever, maybe I want to hang back. 12.04, I know that things work there. And so my point, getting back about the providers, is that there are other providers besides VirtualBox. For instance, there is a provider for DigitalOcean that is provided by Sean DeLynn. I hope I'm pronouncing his name correctly. And so you can imagine you have a provider that is going to build a 12.04 box on your local system and provision it to your specification. And you also want to create a droplet, which is a virtual private server on DigitalOcean, and you want the two to be identical. And so the provider is the mechanism within Vagrant that is the link between Vagrant and the actual platform of DigitalOcean, so that you can have two identical environments, one on your local system and one out in the cloud in DigitalOcean. And so there are more and more providers being added all the time if your particular cloud host isn't there. So this is just really neat stuff. There's a lot of stuff to get in and play around with, but I don't want to make it sound complicated because I found it very intuitive to get started with. And although I'm just getting started, I'm finding it to be a lot of fun and very productive and helpful. So I hope this helps you, and I look forward to seeing you next time here at Web App Hero. Thanks, everybody.